the day my parents were beheaded. It was my fiancé Songyan who personally oversaw the execution. I was quite satisfied because the one who exposed their crimes was me. I asked Songyan, "Do you think I am too ruthless?" Songyan shook his head and praised me. "The princess acts swiftly and decisively." But 20 years later, Songyan despised me, for this very reason. He said, "To climb up, you wouldn't even spare your own parents. Just thinking about a venomous snake, like you lying beside my pillow. I am terrified, even in my dreams." Now, having risen to the position of Prime Minister, he was making a scene about divorcing me. The day after our son's wedding, Songyan had just finished the tea served by our daughter-in-law when he suddenly turned his head toward me. "Princess, let's divorce." His tone was so calm, it was like discussing today's weather. But no one around dared to take his words as a joke, because he was a serious man, sparing with words, and never joked. Instantly, everyone couldn't help but look in unison at me sitting beside him, fearing that the next moment I would draw my blade and rise, slit his throat, and make a bloody scene in the wedding hall. I have many identities. The Empress Dowager's adopted daughter, Princess Anran, a female official at court, and former leader of the Shadow Guards, Zhang Xiaowu. Countless people have died by my hand. I was once the sharpest blade in the Emperor's grasp. However, in recent years, the Empress Dowager passed away. The Emperor fell gravely ill, and court affairs were entirely handled by the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince favors civil officials and believes women should stay home to serve their husbands and raise children. He really dislikes me, his aunt who holds great power, yet highly values scheming civil officials like Songyan. The Crown Prince has remarked more than once, "A gentleman like Lord Song deserves a virtuous lady." My aunt is truly a disgrace to all refinement. Songyan daring to propose divorce at this time is probably also at the Crown Prince's behest. As a representative of civil officials, he has long been at odds with the military faction I represent. To better follow the Crown Prince, divorcing me would be the greatest show of allegiance to him. I knew this all too well, so I didn't argue. "Then let's divorce. After that, I'll resign tomorrow and return to my fief. Winter here is too cold. My fief is warmer." Seeing me agree so readily, Songyan instead felt a surge of displeasure. "Aren't you going to ask why we're divorcing? You are that eager to leave?" I shook my head. "Someone who abandons me, regardless of the reason, isn't worth wasting my time on. I am in the prime of my life now. Once I return to my fief, I can keep a few male consorts and enjoy myself properly." My words made Songyan so angry that he coughed up blood on the spot. It took him quite a while to recover. "You truly are a heartless executioner," I retorted. "Likewise. Back when my parents were executed for their crimes, you, the good son-in-law, were the supervising official at the execution. Your father-in-law's head rolled quite far, dying with his eyes wide open. Back then, that righteous little look of his, dressed in his red official robes, he was incredibly alluring. It would have been fine if I hadn't brought this up. But the moment I mentioned it, Songyan furrowed his brows deeply. "To climb higher. You didn't even spare your own parents. Just thinking that such a venomous snake lies beside my pillow, I am terrified even in my dreams." He knew exactly how to infuriate me. For years, I've been criticized by the civil officials for being too ruthless and cruel, for killing people and crushing their spirits. But no one knew that those parents never treated me as a human being. They forced me to marry the aged and cruel Grand Preceptor Shao in place of their adopted daughter. They wanted to break my legs and turn me into an obedient puppet. What was wrong with me reporting them for treason? I climbed up with my own hands, stepping on piles of corpses, and that makes me a selfish, venomous snake. Then why are those men who kill invisibly amidst schemes and deceptions praised for being a cut above the rest? I sneered coldly. "Venomous snake it is then. You should be grateful that my hands have been shaking from illness these past 2 years, and I can't lift a blade anymore. Otherwise, you'd already be a dead man. Song Yan knew my temper. He couldn't help but step back a little. He said, I don't want a single cent of your dowry. Take it away yourself. But don't take even a bit of anything from my Song household. I nodded. Fine, Song Yan added. The children all side with you. Let them go with you. This time, it wasn't just me who froze. The children all looked shocked, too. My son lost his composure and grabbed Song Yan's hand. Father, you don't even want me anymore? I am your own flesh and blood, Song Yan said. You carry the blood of that Jiang woman in your veins. I am now the Prime Minister. What kind of woman can't I have? I am still young. I can have more children. This infuriated my son greatly. He grabbed his newly wedded wife and wanted to return to the fief with me. My daughter accepted this reality quite easily. I'll go with Mother. Mother loves me the most. I went to the palace to resign from my position and bid farewell to His Majesty. The next day, I received the divorce papers and departed with my children for my fief in Nanshan Prefecture, 1,000 li away. Before leaving, I slapped Song Yan across the face and said without any courtesy, We're cutting all ties. Take care of yourself. Song Yan covered his reddened face, not saying a word for a long while, only his eyes turning red. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I knew what I was thinking. After returning to the fief, the first thing I did was arrange a marriage for my daughter, agreeing that the two would wed in 3 days. The groom was a young lord from a local aristocratic clan. When my son found out, he frowned. Mother, isn't this too hasty? Little sister just came of age. We could take our time choosing. Why settle it so suddenly? We don't even know if his character is good or not. My son really isn't that smart, I said. You'll understand in a few days. My daughter had no doubts about this. She knew I could never harm her. On the day of her wedding, I said to her, If he treats you well after marriage, then live a good life together. If he turns out like your father, just divorce him. Not only can Mother support you for the rest of your life, I can also keep many male concubines for you. My daughter blinked. Mother, you are actually planning to keep male concubines for me? Aren't you afraid those civil officials will write memorials again, cursing you for corrupting public morals? It seems my daughter isn't very clever either. I analyzed for her. When men keep concubines, it is praised as romantic affairs. How come when it is women, it becomes corrupting public morals? It is nothing but the magistrate being allowed to set fires, while commoners aren't even allowed to light lamps. What they say doesn't matter. Just do whatever makes you happy. With the power I hold, naturally the worse my reputation, the better. My daughter nodded, seeming to half understand. A few days later, a group arrived from the capital. The leading eunuch held an imperial edict written on behalf of the crown prince, claiming they wanted to make my daughter a secondary consort of the crown prince, and have her depart for the palace within 3 days. I unhurriedly pulled out the marriage certificate from my sleeve. My daughter married the 3rd young master of the Yu family 2 days ago. I am afraid a married woman isn't worthy of His Highness the Crown Prince. Please relay the message and have His Highness agree to cancel the engagement. After the eunuch accepted the gold nuggets I gave him, he became much more polite to me. He immediately led his people back the way they came after all. They couldn't have the dignified crown prince marry an already wed woman. My son asked me, Mother, how did you know the crown prince wanted to take little sister as a concubine? I said, Why do you think your father divorced me at this time? Do you really think it is as simple as it appears on the surface? Although His Majesty has been plagued by illness, he is still alive. The crown prince lacks ability, and His Majesty has complained about this quite a bit. Rumors in court about deposing the crown prince and installing the 3rd prince have been spreading more intensely. The crown prince has been crown prince for 23 years. Now I am afraid he can't wait any longer. He is thinking of patricide, but he can't accomplish it alone. He wants to drag your father in as a scapegoat. If he succeeds, he becomes emperor, and your father becomes second to one but above all others. If he fails, His Majesty values sentiment, so he wouldn't have the crown prince executed, at most demoting him to a commoner and exiling him to some cold, desolate land. But your father won't be so lucky, he'll be executed. That is why he divorced me at this time, had a falling out with me, and made me bring all of you up to the fief. What he wants is to have no worries holding him back, so that even if something happens to him, he can still keep us safe. But the crown prince is obviously suspicious, afraid that without any ties binding him, your father won't be an obedient dog. He wants to win over and, more importantly, chain down your father. The best way he can think of is to add another layer of marriage ties with your father. You are already married, so having your sister become a secondary consort is the best choice. My son listened in complete shock. Then what should we do now? Since father has his reasons, we can't just ignore this. How about I go to the capital right now to save father? I sighed. He really is an idiot. The two of us, clever people who play political games. How did we end up giving birth to such a fool? I said, wrong. To protect all of you, we should completely break ties with your father. We'll side with the third prince. This way, no matter who wins in the future, we won't lose. If the crown prince wins, your father will plead for us and save our whole family's lives. If the third prince wins, I'll also beg him to spare your father's life. After hearing this, my son was confused again. Then how should we side with the third prince? Just by writing letters? Wouldn't that leave too much evidence? He really is a simple-minded military man. Fortunately, he listens to me, I told him. The crown prince's biggest support right now is his father-in-law. Duke Chen, the crown princess's father, leave tonight, secretly go to Duzhou where Duke Chen is stationed, and then simply cut off his head. My son was stunned. Kill the crown prince's father-in-law? Just me? I rolled my eyes at him. If your mother here could still wield a blade, would this great achievement even fall to you? Although my son was a bit scared, he still nodded in agreement. He knew my decisions had never been wrong, and in our family, I've always had the final say. My words are like an imperial decree to him. My son left overnight with his bow and arrows, disguised as an ordinary hunter, and quietly headed to Duzhou. On the other side, I wasn't idle either. I had my daughter openly and lavishly search for male consorts for me, bringing those beautiful young men into the mansion, one after another as ornaments. Only in this way can I make the crown prince completely believe that Songyan and I have completely fallen out. I've been able to stand firm in the court as the only female official for 20 years naturally. I have my strengths. I've never been a meek lady of the boudoir. If there is danger, I face it head on. If there is a conspiracy, I break it. Songyan has always loved me for being this vibrant. He has treated me the same for 20 years. How could he suddenly grow tired of me? Even less would he abandon these two children. He loves most along with me. So on the day I left, I had already guessed. Going along with leaving was to put his mind at ease. 10 days later, news came back. Duke Chen was killed by a masked assassin with a bow and arrow, while on a spring outing. The arrow bore the mark of the crown prince's residence. When my son returned, he asked me, "Mother, Duke Chen clearly died by my bow and arrow. So how could the arrow bear the mark of the crown prince's residence?" I smiled. This is a good thing. Someone secretly switched your arrow, cleared you of suspicion, and made the crown prince and Duke Chen's household fight like dogs. It seems I am not the only one who wants the crown prince to fall. Being able to obtain an arrow with the crown prince's residence's mark, and secretly replace my son's original arrow without anyone noticing, this isn't something one person could pull off. In the capital, someone took an arrow from the crown prince's residence, correctly calculated that I would send my son to kill Duke Chen, and had it delivered post-haste. And someone was already waiting in Duzhou. My son rarely appears in public, yet that person could recognize my son and was in league with the one in the capital. It should also be someone I know. The person in the capital should be Songyan, and as for the one waiting in Duzhou, I don't know who it is. Perhaps it is my senior martial brother who serves as the commander of the Shadow Guards. Only he has the skill to swap my son's arrows, without anyone noticing, and my senior martial brother is His Majesty's man. The gravely ill His Majesty isn't as uninvolved in court affairs as he appears on the surface. If His Majesty wants to use my son's hand to shake the Crown Prince's foundation, then His Majesty must already be extremely dissatisfied with the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is in big trouble now. When the spy brought news again, the Crown Prince's residence in the capital was already in chaos. The Crown Princess fainted from crying several times upon hearing the news of Duke Chen's death. The Crown Prince went to coax her, but with reddened eyes, she held the blood-stained arrow and confronted him. My father devoted himself to paving the way for you, yet you actually ordered someone to kill him. How heartless of you. I want to divorce you and return home with my dowry. The Crown Prince was very flustered. He clearly hadn't done anything, but the evidence was right before his eyes. He couldn't defend himself, and could only keep explaining to her. I didn't. I was framed by someone. The Crown Prince's ability to quickly win over many talents was inseparable from the enormous dowry the Crown Princess brought. If the Crown Princess insisted on divorce, and people discovered that he had embezzled most of her dowry over these years, how would the world view him? He could only desperately beg the Crown Princess not to leave him. Just at that moment, a palace maid in the Eastern Palace was found to be 3 months pregnant, and the child was the Crown Prince's back. Then, in order to trick the Crown Princess into marrying him, the Crown Prince had always promised one lifetime, one pair. Now, not only had he failed to keep that promise, there was even a child. The Crown Princess flew into a rage again, and wanted to kill that palace maid to make an example of her, but the Crown Prince refused. The Crown Prince believed that the eldest son born by the Crown Princess was weak and frail, so if this palace maid could give birth to a son, it would be a great thing for him. The Crown Princess didn't hold back anymore. Taking advantage of a grand banquet in the palace, she directly accused the Crown Prince in front of the Empress, all the imperial consorts, and all the noble ladies of the capital, charging him with misappropriating her dowry and demanding a divorce. The Empress couldn't bear the loss of face, so she had no choice but to agree. She used her own private treasury to make up for the dowry misappropriated by the Crown Prince and allowed the Crown Princess to divorce and return home. However, as a result, the Empress's private treasury was nearly depleted, and the Crown Prince completely lost the Duke of Chen's manor as his support. A few more days passed, and a spy came to report that Song Yin had been imprisoned, charged with embezzling public funds. Me child was anxious, like an ant on a hot pan. Mother, will father be executed? What should we do now? My father has been upright his whole life. How could he possibly embezzle money? It was obvious that the Crown Prince had noticed Song Yan's wavering loyalty toward him and was taking the opportunity to retaliate. I sighed. His Majesty would never chill the passionate devotion of his trusted confidants, unless he is already too ill to issue a decree. We just need to wait and see. My son was confused again. Isn't my father the Crown Prince's confidant? How did he become His Majesty's confidant? Call him stupid. And he really is boundlessly stupid. I lightly tapped his head. Silly son. I am His Majesty's confidant. If your father weren't His Majesty's confidant, why would His Majesty have bestowed our marriage back then? He is naturally also His Majesty's confidant, just hidden deeper than me. He secretly helped you use arrows, marked with the Crown Prince's seal to kill Duke Chen, so he naturally couldn't truly be the Crown Prince's man. A few days later, news of His Majesty's critical illness reached the fief. Along with it came news that Song Yan had been demoted to a commoner, as well as a letter from the Crown Prince, summoning me to the capital to attend to His Majesty's illness. It seems the Crown Prince still doesn't intend to let me go, whether using me to threaten Song Yan or killing me to intimidate those military generals. Both are good choices for him. After reassuring my son, daughter-in-law, and daughter, I got on the carriage back to the capital alone. At least they are safe for now. The carriage swayed back and forth. I threw up several times along the way. When we reached the capital, I was leaning against the window with a deathly pale face, crying out that I was dizzy. The accompanying maidservants hurriedly summoned a doctor to treat me. The doctor said I was getting on in years and exhausted from the journey, needing plenty of rest. When the Crown Prince sent someone to fetch me and saw me in this state, they hurried to report to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince didn't let me rest for a couple of days because I was unwell. Instead, he eagerly summoned me into the palace to attend to His Majesty's illness. He said, "You are the Empress Dowager's adopted daughter, which makes you His Majesty's adopted sister. You are the most suitable person to attend to him. Besides, His Majesty hasn't seen you in a long time. You two can have a nice catch-up. He has placed His Majesty under house arrest, and now wants to do the same to me." I had wanted to see Songyan before entering the palace, but that wish wasn't fulfilled either. So be it. I sighed and resigned myself to boarding the carriage to the palace. Passing through layers of guards, I finally arrived at His Majesty's bedchamber. Only then did I discover that I wasn't the only one in His Majesty's bedchamber. There was also noble consort Yu and the second prince, even the young seventh prince. Except for the third prince who had secretly slipped out of the capital earlier, all of us who opposed the Crown Prince had been effectively placed under house arrest by him, including His Majesty. Outside, troops surrounded us like an iron barrel. We couldn't get out, and no one else could get in. I didn't get to see the Crown Prince, but seeing His Majesty, noble consort Yu and the others was also good. His Majesty, noble consort Yu and I shared a bond from growing up together since childhood. His Majesty once said I was more like his older sister. He was lying on the sickbed this moment, his chest rising and falling slightly, looking like he didn't have many days left to hang on. When he saw me, he was very happy. "Xiao Wu, you are back. It is good that you are back. With you here, I am at ease." Consort Yu stood by the bed wiping her tears. "That Crown Prince. Really? Why did he call you back? You could have stayed out of this, but now you can only accompany this consort and His Majesty to die together." I comforted her. "This is fine too, at least we're reunited." For the next few days, I stayed in His Majesty's bedchamber, not allowed to leave even a single step, until the Crown Prince appeared in the bedchamber, with a squad of soldiers behind him, each holding a large blade. He himself was holding an abdication edict waiting to be sealed, as well as a cup of poisoned wine. He said to His Majesty, "Royal Father, please abdicate the throne to me. Otherwise your son will have to be rebellious and unfilial, and personally send you on your way. All these people you care about, your son will kill them all. If you obediently agree, your son can spare them a way out." Who said the Crown Prince was indecisive? When dealing with family, he is way too cold-blooded. He and His Majesty were exactly opposite types of people. His Majesty was cold and ruthless to outsiders, yet valued family bonds immensely. He was lenient to outsiders, always forgiving this one and that one, caring about the empty reputation of being called virtuous. But deep down, he was extremely selfish and cold. He was nothing like His Majesty. His Majesty's answer was to shakily extend his hand and flip over the tray in his hands. Rebellious son. The porcelain cup on the tray shattered on the ground, breaking into pieces. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes, no longer having the patience to deal with His Majesty. He couldn't wait to become the Emperor. He reached out and grabbed His Majesty's hand, about to force him to stamp the imperial edict. At that critical moment, His Majesty sighed. "Xiao Wu, leave no one alive." Before the Crown Prince could even ask who Xiao Wu was, a flash of silver suddenly appeared before him. By the time he reacted, I had already slit his throat with the flexible sword hidden at my waist. He clutched his blood-soaked neck, his face full of disbelief. "Auntie, you actually have such skills. Were you faking your illness?" "What else? Why would I? Perfectly healthy." suddenly fall ill right after the crown prince started seizing power. I had no time to explain to him. I just turned around and swiftly dealt with the men the crown prince had brought. By the time bodies lay scattered all over the floor, the situation outside had also changed. Samanon had fought their way to outside the sleeping chamber and dealt with the crown prince's mansion guards who had been surrounding the chamber, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. I pushed open the door and looked up. It was my senior martial brother who had carved a bloody path with the shadow guards. We exchanged a smile. Senior brother, long time no see. And behind him, my silly son had also brought a weapon, shouting, "Mother, I am here to save you." Dumb but sincere. "Mother, will His Majesty blame you for secretly siding with the third prince?" My son anxiously asked me when no one else was around. "When did I ever side with the third prince?" I shrugged, smiling slyly. "But didn't you say before that you were going to side with the third prince? Just talk? I am His Majesty's confidant. So naturally, I only take orders from His Majesty, even if he is dying." A moment later, Song Yan also entered the palace. After the prison ordeal, he looked much older, with several white hairs having sprouted. We exchanged a smile. We were both His Majesty's loyal servants. His Majesty had won, so neither of us had to die, and we would surely be promoted in the future. But his position among civil officials had long reached the top, so His Majesty would have to worry about how to reward him this time. After the crisis was resolved, His Majesty's spirits were noticeably much better. Unexpectedly, after the crown prince died, he didn't choose the outstanding third prince to become the new crown prince, but instead chose the second prince born to imperial consort Yu. The second prince was neither the legitimate heir nor the eldest, but he valued filial piety and sentiment. When the crown prince besieged the palace, he didn't flee like the third prince. Instead, he took the initiative to enter the palace to attend to His Majesty's illness, and secretly smuggled in slices from 2-century-old ginseng roots at the risk of his life, for His Majesty to hold under his tongue to sustain his life. Otherwise, with all that turmoil caused by the crown prince, His Majesty would have long been angered to death. The second prince became the crown prince, and I was the happiest about it. The second prince's birth mother, noble consort Yu, was my close friend from our maiden days. Once she becomes the Empress Dowager, wouldn't I be able to strut around the palace as I please? However, I soon couldn't be happy anymore. His Majesty's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse in the afternoon, and the imperial physician implied he wouldn't last until tomorrow. Before his death, His Majesty summoned me and Song Yan to his bedside. He said, "I shall bestow upon Xiao Wu the title of Regent Grand Princess, and appoint Song Yan as the Crown Prince's Grand Tutor. After I pass away, Song Yan will rightfully become the Grand Preceptor. I am entrusting the Crown Prince to you two, with one of you in civil affairs, and one in military, assisting him well together. I can rest assured." Meme, a Regent Grand Princess. This pie falling from the sky was too big. I almost couldn't process it for a moment. With reddened eyes, I kowtowed to His Majesty. "Thank you for your Majesty's trust, but can your Majesty please not die?" He was the little brother I watched grow up. How could he suddenly die before me? Hearing me say this, His Majesty suddenly smiled. He called out to me, "Xiao Wu, if there is a next life, be my elder sister. In my heart, I've always thought of you as my elder sister." As I listened, memories of the past came flooding back, and tears rolled down my face. His Majesty reached out with a handkerchief to gently wipe away the tears at the corners of my eyes. "Elder sister, let's meet again in the next life." Then he closed his eyes forever, and throughout the entire bedchamber, cries of grief shook the heavens. He was a good emperor and also a good little brother. He never looked down on me because of my birth. After His Majesty passed away, noble consort Yu became the Empress Dowager, and the second prince became the new emperor. Because there were too many things to handle, I stayed directly in the palace during this period. By the time most matters were settled, I realized I hadn't left the palace for 2 months. Every time Song Yan saw me, he had many complaints, like a husband waiting stone. "Princess, when will you come home with me?" I always made excuses about being too busy, until the early spring palace banquet, when Empress Dowager Yu jokingly said she'd give me 2 bed-warming male concubines. Only then did I realize I had been sleeping alone for too long, and my bed was indeed a bit lonely. When Song Yan came looking for me again, I said to him, "You and I are already divorced. Didn't you say I was cruel and ruthless? Now you are a free man. You can marry as many gentle and docile women as you want." Song Yan got anxious. "Princess, I had my reasons for proposing the divorce back then. If I hadn't said that, how would the crown prince believe there was a rift between us? I never thought you were cruel and ruthless. I climbed up step by step from the Ministry of Justice. When it comes to being cruel and ruthless, we're the perfect match." As he spoke, he handed me a marriage certificate. This old scoundrel actually wanted to marry me again, to be husband and wife once more, not afraid of being laughed at for doing this at his age. I glared at him, but I've kept those words in my heart. You go marry someone gentle and docile, and I'll go take a look at some young men. Young ones surely don't snore in their sleep like you do. When he made a fuss about divorce back then, it gave me quite a scare and made me sad for a long time. Now I'll let him have a taste of what divorce feels like. Song Yan was so scared that he came to pester me every day, sometimes bringing fruits, sometimes bringing pastries, being extremely attentive and thoughtful. Samanon saw this and advised him, "Lord Song, you are now the head of all civil officials. What kind of young and tender wife couldn't you have? Why beg that old woman? This humble servant has a niece, sweet 16, and I wish to offer her to you as a concubine." Before that person could say more, Song Yan, such a gentle and refined man, got so angry that he kicked him right away. "You are ruining someone's marriage. Beware of heavenly retribution. Being 16 is wonderful, but my wife was once 16 too. She married me at 16, managed the household for me, bore and raised children for me, and wore herself down into what she is today. 16-year-olds are common, but I only have one wife like mine. Besides, I am a 40-year-old man now. I don't deserve a 16-year-old either. Being matched with my wife, who still has her charm, is just right." His few words rendered that official speechless. When these words reached my ears, they were especially pleasant to hear. Daring to poach my man, the very next day I submitted a memorial to the new emperor, impeaching that official and getting 3 months of his salary docked. After that, no one in the entire court dared to send beauties to Song Yan. Another month passed, and when I heard my daughter-in-law was pregnant, I finally moved back to the Grand Preceptor's residence, under the pretense of taking care of her. Song Yan was overjoyed beyond measure, personally driving a carriage to wait for me at the palace gate, carefully helping me onto the carriage, and once again presenting the marriage certificate. "Princess, would you be willing to marry this subject once more? If not, this subject is fine being your male consort without any status or title." Look how aggrieved he was acting. Where has anyone ever heard of the current Grand Tutor becoming a male consort? If word got out, people would laugh their teeth off. But he really did become one. After returning to the manor, he came to my room at night carrying his own blanket. And no matter what was said, he couldn't be driven away. One day he was eating mutton soup by the roadside, and the old man selling mutton soup asked him, "Sir, judging by your age, is your wife at home still alive?" Song Yan answered, "I am embarrassed to say, I am not married yet. I've been serving as a male consort for the princess." The old man was so shocked that the bowl and chopsticks in his hands fell to the ground, thinking to himself, "Which princess is this? Her taste is quite peculiar, doesn't like young men, but likes an old one. That is right. I am that princess, and I just like older men. And that older man, he likes me too." Later, when Empress Dowager Yu mentioned my daughter, Her face was full of regret. I had originally intended for your daughter to be my daughter-in-law. It is all the deposed crown prince's fault that she had to marry so early. Let my daughter become empress. There is really no need for our whole family to be that noble. I think things are pretty good now. Entering the palace would inevitably mean competing for favor with other women. Married among commoners, with parents like us backing her up, she can walk sideways at her in-law's house. If her husband treats her poorly, even if she keeps 2 male consorts, no one would dare say anything. Songyan once felt he owed his daughter and said he wanted to secure an official position in the capital for his son-in-law. I stopped him. Don't, rather than helping your son-in-law, you'd be better off helping your own daughter. If your son-in-law becomes successful, he might turn around and marry someone else. Better to get your daughter a position as a female official. When she succeeds, your son-in-law will also bask in her glory. If he doesn't like it, he can just suck it up. Songyan thought it made sense, so he got his son-in-law a nominal position in the capital, but had his daughter enter the palace for training. She first became a female official by the Empress Dowager's side, then was transferred to the Ministry of Personnel for 2 years, and then started working with me. Empress Dowager Yu saw this and said, "You are promoting your daughter. Why don't you promote your son too?" I laughed. It is fine for him to be a bit of a good-for-nothing. With parents like us, as long as he doesn't kill or commit arson, he'll be set for life. A person can't be too perfect. They need to have flaws. My husband and I are too much in the spotlight right now. If we raise an exceptionally outstanding son on top of that, the new emperor would start suspecting our family of plotting a rebellion. With our son being a bit dumb, His Majesty can rest easy. More than a decade passed like this. When we had a house full of children and grandchildren, Songyan went 1 step ahead of me and passed away first. Before he passed away, he held my hand and said, "Back then, when I heard His Majesty was going to bestow a marriage between us, I immediately requested from my superiors to oversee your parents' execution. I originally wanted to scare you into backing off, but you smiled at me at the execution ground, and I fell in love with you at first sight." To fall in love with me at first sight at the execution ground. He must have had something wrong with him, but I never told him that actually I was the same. I fell in love with him at first sight too. The late emperor granting us marriage was truly a great thing he did. When Songyan passed, I held his hand and told him to walk slowly to wait for me. If he meets my parents, my elder brother, or my adopted sister in the underworld, don't bother with them. I cut ties with them long ago. The 2nd year after Songyan passed, I fell ill from longing and breathed my last too. As my eyes were about to close, I seemed to see him coming to my bedside to take me, and with him was the late emperor, smiling cheerfully. How wonderful.